Mute myself.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kathy Neifeld, one of the four partners at Agency One. Together with Ed Lesher, Dennis Bartos, and Gonzalo Garcia, I am honored to welcome you to the 2020 Agency One Annual Advisor Conference. This is the third week of our conference and the second session for today. We still have 4 more session days tomorrow and next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of phenomenal speakers and content to share with you. We hope that you have registered and will attend the upcoming sessions. Thank you for joining us. Earlier today, we heard from Sean Britt, Director of Long-Term Initiatives Advanced Consulting Group with Nationwide, along with Kim Nadovitz, a phenomenal advisor with TriBridge Partners on planning the pandemic and linked benefits. If you missed that session, or any of the sessions from the last 2 weeks, they have all been recorded and are available to you on the CVent site through the Attendee Hub. This afternoon, we are hosting a workshop on how to change the conversation with your clients to create an empowered wealth mindset and 10 times your business. This is going to be in a panel discussion format with myself, my partner Gonzalo Garcia, and featuring CEO and co-founder of Empowered Wealth, Ron Nakamoto, along with advisor Avi Cantor, founder of the Certior Group. I think it's important for me to introduce this session by telling you a little bit about the background of both Ron and Avi, because it sets the tone as to how they started in this industry and where they are today by utilizing the Empowered Wealth concepts. Ron is the co-founder of Empowered Wealth Plus, a teaching, training, and coaching organization working with financial advisors. He began his career in 1984 as an agent for New England Mutual Life Insurance Company. He earned his CFP, CLU, and CHFC designations in 1987. After New England Life was acquired by MetLife, he established his own independent insurance, investment, and financial planning firm called Strategic Financial. After retiring from this firm in 2007, and after a brief stint as a real estate developer, in 2011, he became CEO of Empowered Wealth, a training organization based on the work of Lee Brower and the book, The Brower Quadrant. As a licensee of Empowered Wealth's intellectual property, Ron has integrated behavioral finance, humanistic psychology, transformational leadership, and experiential learning concepts and tools into a robust, groundbreaking approach to multi-generational wealth as a means to greater happiness, fulfillment, meaning, and joy in life. Avi Cantor is the founder of the Certior Group, a multi-family office in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, that emphasizes the alignment of people, process, and structure to optimize multi-generational true wealth. He developed his business experience at an early age, working in the family real estate business. Avi earned his BA in political economy from the Murphy Institute at Tulane University and started his career as a strategy consultant with Coopers & Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, in their New York office. After working overseas as the director for an international trade company, Avi moved back to the Philadelphia area and established a financial planning and wealth management firm in 2000, which continues to flourish today. Having experienced the very positive benefits that Empowered Wealth had on his personal and business life, Avi aspired to create an environment that would steward other great families in optimizing and perpetuating their true wealth. With that in mind, Avi moved with his family to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, increasing the congruency between his personal values, his family life, and his business activities, establishing the Certior Group. Before I turn this over to Gonzalo to lead this workshop, I have a few housekeeping items. All attendees will be on mute. Please submit your questions through the chat function in either the Attendee Hub or at the bottom of the screen. You can also submit them there. The session will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available after the session. And please do not forget to complete the session survey. Again, I would like to thank you all for being here. And now I'm going to turn this over to Gonzalo.
Thank you, Kathy. I am really excited to be here this afternoon with two people that I consider friends and certainly mentors in a lot of ways to me. Hey, Teresa, can I ask you to unshare your screen so I can go ahead and share something here real quick? Give me 1 second, folks, sorry. During a session earlier this week, David York, during his presentation on building legacies that last, suggests that financial advisors should be approaching conversations in a different way. And you know, if you look at the slide that's up on the screen, this was one of the slides that he spent a fair amount of time on. And you know, it's an interesting dynamic, right? We all spend so much of our careers competing on numbers and competing on planning and competing on concepts. And, you know, we look at structure and numbers and financial products and rates of return and so on. And, you know, this really struck me as really a way to change the conversation. And you know, if you just look at these questions, right, if you could transfer all your financial wealth without any tax, or you could have grateful children, which one would you pick? If you could average 12% return on your investments or have children who were self-reliant, self-sufficient, productive, and mature, what would you pick? And you can read the rest of the questions, right? You don't need me to read them for you. But, you know, his basic premise throughout his entire presentation was that for all the planning that we do for our clients, most of the time it fails. In fact, I think he said 97% of the time it fails. And there's a number of studies and different approaches to this, and we'll talk more about that. But you know, what we end up doing is we're preparing the wealth for the heirs, but we have really not prepared the heirs for the wealth. So we've prepared the wealth for the heirs, but we have not prepared the heirs for the wealth. I'm a big advocate of the fact that I think that we as advisors and guides to our clients in many ways, we can do better than that. And we need to change the conversation. And if you subscribe to that theory, I think that today's workshop is going to be helpful to you. You know, David lays some of the groundwork for all of this, but the big question that I think that we need to ask ourselves is how do we operationalize it? How do we put it into practice? You know, and that the other comment that I would make about kind of this crazy financial services world that I've been a part of now for almost 40 years, is that our business is becoming highly commoditized, whether it's on fees or on price or product or, you know, whatever it may be, we're all competing by the numbers. And I think that by changing the conversation, we will move well beyond the price of our products and services. So, you know, with that backdrop, what I'd like to, you know, just kind of ask Ron, who really, you know, just to give you a little bit of color, I had known and followed Lee Brower for many, many years, through which I met Ron. And coincidentally, I had met Ron years before, and I didn't even know I had, when he was running his firm out in the Bay Area in San Francisco. But, you know, we, Agency One, had a Empowered Wealth training session for a group of advisors, some of them which are probably on this call today. And then we did a second training session, and we have continued to kind of have a lot of dialogue and a lot of training for folks within our advisory community. You know, Ron has been instrumental in helping us get there. And then just kind of to bridge over to Avi, has been working with Ron for many years, and I've gotten to know Avi in his practice. And I just think it's a great example of how we can really begin to change the dialogue in our industry. So Ron, I'd like to just invite you to just kind of tell your story a little bit, and kind of how did you get from being a top of the table super producer in California to where you are today, and what was the passion that drove you there, and kind of what's that backstory?
Well, a big part of that backstory is, you know, you can learn from personal experience, or you can learn from the mistakes of others. So the spirit of this is really that hopefully you'll see that a lot of this training is learning from the mistakes of myself and a few other people. But it is true, believe it or not. In the 90s, I was a AALU member, high-level producer, member of a well-regarded producer group that maybe a few of the people on this call either were or are still members of. So, I went through all of that, and then in roughly about 2000, Lee Brower, I think, spoke at AALU, and I was introduced to Lee. And the thing about his work that struck me was that it was a different way of looking at wealth. And so I raised my hand and said, look, I want to be trained in this stuff. It seems to me to be kind of a cutting edge way of thinking. And it turned out to be just that. And subsequently, I think it's proven its merit over time. His work, just for those of you who may not be familiar with Lee Brower, he was a very successful producer in the Salt Lake City area. He's also continues to be a coach, a strategic coach. And I'm sure there's a number of people on this call who are either participants or have participated in Dan Sullivan's strategic coach work. So all of that is part of Lee's background. And he's an inspirational speaker. He's spoken to large audiences and done a lot of speaking, particularly on gratitude. And that's what's really informed his work. So I was very interested in being trained in that work, but it was always in the 2000s, and it was always as a means to an end, as a sales technique, instead of having the sales idea du jour, I had sort of a sales strategy based on, well, here's true wealth, and here's gratitude, and we can do a lot of stuff for you. And so I parlayed that into a very successful practice. But in the mid 2000s, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of compliance, but I got a little tired of compliance and decided, hey, I was financially independent. I didn't really need to put up with that anymore. So, I flat out retired in the mid to late 2000s. And then I don't know if anybody heard about this, but there was this little dip in the economy in 2008. Yep. And I had strategically decided I was going to be a real estate developer at that time. And not only that, I had leveraged myself to the hilt at that time. And then that didn't turn out so well. Add to that, getting divorced and getting alienated from my son and losing all my friends. And on top of that, losing all my money. Things weren't looking so good in 2011, but that's when I decided, hey, I'm gonna pick myself up and do something different. And instead of going back into what I was doing, I approached Lee Brower again. So here's Lee coming back into the picture. I said, hey, I've always liked your work. Can I work with you this time around? And fortunately, he said yes. So I relearned his material from the inside this time. And then I noticed that he didn't have a training program for advisors. And that was the big, the light bulb went on for me then, was that, hey, if I trained advisors, that would be a way for me to do what I love to do and be helpful and build a new practice that way. So that's what I did. And along the way, we've added a lot of material, so hence the EW Plus. We've added the work of other people, principally integrated it with some of the writings of David Brooks and some of the psychological structures of Abraham Maslow and numerous other thinkers. So I'm pleased that we've had some good results with advisors, and most noteworthy of whom I think is Avi Cantor. And I'd be the first to say that it's not a straight path to riches and nirvana, but I will say that I think over time, the whole notion of building your practice around the fundamentals of gratitude and true wealth, plus leadership, which is really the other core element. I think that's proven to be not only useful personally, it's been successful in business, and I think much needed right now, given the conditions that we live under. So with that, I think really the more important thing now is for Avi to tell his story. And
Yeah.
I think you'll see a lot in it that is worth paying attention to.
Well, thank you for that backdrop, Ron. And, again, I think foundationally what you talk about is gratitude and true wealth. And of course, leadership, which comes out of that. But I think that, as you well said, Avi kind of embodies that whole concept and just the kind of work that he's doing and how he's guiding his clients is just remarkable. So, Avi, please share with us kind of where you've been, how you got here. I know you've got a couple quick slides to share with us, and please take it away.
Thank you. First of all, I'm grateful to be here and with all of you, and thank you for joining. I'd be remiss if I didn't just thank really the communities that I get to be a part of every day. Often we hear that spoken about when we talk about raising our children and that it takes a village. But really, I owe big gratitude to everybody I've been surrounded by, from my own family, distant and immediate, and to the wonderful collaborators and colleagues that I get to work with every day. So grateful to be here. If there are questions along the way, please feel free to chat them. I think, Kathy, you're monitoring questions, and if we can address them along the way, I'd love to do so. We'll open up to some Q&A at the end as well. For me, it's always interesting to think about, where do I begin? And I think probably the best entry point by way of introduction is to take us back to about 2010, 2012. And like everybody else, I went through as an advisor who's building a new firm, a deep recession. We persevered. I think we navigated that. It was challenging, but we survived, and the firm continued to grow. Being an individual practitioner, I was proud of the growth we had. Coming into the business, I'd always had a goal for myself of being $1 million or multi-million-dollar producer. And coming out of the financial crisis, I was able to achieve those goals and began to see a lot of exponential success in the traditional way you would measure it financially. But what was interesting is that in some ways, still left feeling somewhat unfulfilled. And so for somebody who would casually observe Avi and the life we were living at the time, I had just bought a new home in the suburbs of Philadelphia, out in the main line. Joined the country club that we always wanted to join, drove the cars that we always wanted to drive, and we're raising 3 beautiful children and sending them to private schools. I have been a strategic coach and owe a lot of gratitude to them for many of the tools and concepts that helped us grow and scale. But to cut through the chase, as they say, I woke up in 2013 really wondering what life was going to look like for us, and having similar struggles that many of us have, looking for joy and meaning and fulfillment in life. We're avid skiers, for those who know me personally. My wife and I raised the kids skiing, and Jackson Hole, many know it as, became a place we like to visit once or twice a year. So on one of those infamous trips out here, sitting in a hot tub, probably on the second beer, maybe the third, my wife very casually leaned over and asked me if I could see myself living here one day. And for those of you that are married and had a spouse, contemplate where one day you might retire. That's the framework with which I understood that question. She was contemplating where would we live one day. I didn't realize that she meant right away. So I naively said, yeah, I could see myself living here one day. And then the follow-on question is, she asked me, can I look around? And I thought that was great. We had only been there in the winters, and we should probably come out and spend summer there someday. If you had told me in that moment that 36 hours later we'd be renting a house for a year and moving, I would have told you you're crazy. But that's exactly what happened. And quite spontaneously, we made a decision to uproot. We did keep Philly and the business and everything intact, but we made a decision to leave. And we went to Jackson for the year. That was the year of kind of 2012 and 13. Had a great year. I commuted every week back to work in Philly. And at the end, I said, honey, that was fun. What a great year, like many families traveling abroad or, seeing the world. I said, time to go home. To which she replied, what do you mean go home? I thought we moved here. And today I smile, and our friends here in Jackson often joke that I moved here to stay married. That decision came on the heels of really some very fortuitous things that happened to me in 2013. So we went back home. Well, we went back to Philly, but really unsure of what our future was going to look like, challenged in making now choices about our personal lives, about our business lives, having lots of opportunities and lots of confusion. And I think for many of us, every day we only have so much, we call them tiers: time, energy, attention, and resources. But there are many things that seem important to us. And what Rachel and I lacked, and what really challenged our marriage at the time, was a lack of focus. I mentioned that I was in strategic coach. I knew Lee Brower through strategic coach, and had an opportunity to spend a few days with him personally as a couple, Rachel and I. So really my journey with Ron and with Empowered Wealth began when we said yes to an amazing experience, to 2 or 3 days with Lee, where my wife and I had the unique opportunity to slow down and really discover what we cared about, to really spend the time reflecting on and thinking about not just what was important to us, but what was essential to us. And coming out of that experience, it became very clear that there were going to be a handful of things that we each individually and together truly valued, that were going to be meaningful in our lives. And those really became the keys or the drivers that were going to influence how we were going to make decisions and deploy our resources, our time, our energy, our attention, and our resources. It also let us peacefully say no to things that were going to get in the way of that. I'd like to tell you that the road back to Jackson was smooth. It took us a few years to figure that out. But coming out of that deep discovery, what we got is a lot of focus, a lot of energy, and a lot of alignment. And for the first time in many, many years, we felt both aligned as a couple, but I felt more congruent with the choices and decisions I was going to make. So I'll pause here for a second, see if there are any thoughts or questions. Otherwise, I'd be happy to continue sort of with the next phase of the story.
You got me on the edge of my seat, Avi. Unless somebody else has something to say, I guess we'll continue. Any questions there, Kathy? Go for it, Avi.
All right. So, again, and, when I think back today, the timing for many of these things was amazing. We were embarking on a new stage in our lives, moving to Jackson, and an opportunity really to look at the things that were meaningful to us, as I had shared. The tools and the concepts and the things that often we talk about, particularly from Empowered Wealth, weren't things that I was taught, albeit Ron, I have to say, is an incredible mentor and teacher. And so grateful to not only have a professional, but a relationship, but a friendship with Ron. Most of our learning came from applying these ideas at home. So it was never my intent day one to take these ideas of Empowered Wealth to work. Everything I learned anecdotally and otherwise was by trying to improve our family, by trying to provide my kids with the tools and the mindsets and the frameworks that would help them not only survive, but thrive in this world that's become more and more challenging. I mean, imagine, raising today our children with everything that's coming at them, all the options and choices that they have. And also my wife and I, they're trying to practice and be more aware and use the insights that we had. And it took time. And so, one of the big insights for us, and I do have some slides here. In fact, let me bring them up because I think they will help convey a few of these ideas. And Gonzalo, can you confirm whether or not those are showing up?
Yep, those are perfect. Yep, I can see them.
All right, great. So, there are 5 kind of big ideas through my story I'd like to share with you. So in thinking back about the time, we've spent today, I believe that if you make a note of these, they really would be good markers and milestones for the conversation. For us, first and foremost, everything really began in gratitude. And more and more is being said about gratitude as a practice, but not just an idea, aspirational. While, I'm grateful for the beautiful mountains or the weather, but truly beginning in gratitude and living in a life with gratitude. Ron has a tremendous model that he uses to teach that, and we taught that immediately to our children. And it was a remarkable transformation to observe how that began to really change the kids' attitudes about life and how fortunate we are. The next one I briefly want to emphasize, and this takes me back to the Horizon experience with Lee, was the deep discovery, the gift of time. And for me, it was really Rachel and I slowing down and connecting with what mattered. But I came to realize the importance of taking the time to figure out what we care about. All of us have been through or are still going through a crisis right now. And, this recent pandemic, albeit challenging at various levels to us, I believe a crisis has a way of really revealing what we care about. Because in the midst of a crisis, we tend to immediately start focusing on the things that we care most about, the things that are most important to us that we need to protect or look out for or shore up. And so, in a crisis that we had in our family and relationship and trying to make decisions, or in the crisis that we have today, the ability to slow down and to pay attention and the way it illuminates things is absolutely tremendous. And so we've made that a practice today with our clients of taking the time to create a space. And that's why we call it the gift of time, is to create a space for them to really connect with the things they care most about. I just want to briefly digress and juxtapose that on traditional estate planning. And I don't mean this critically, but most estate planning meetings, discovery meetings I've been in, are a couple hours long. They usually start with, some small talk question, but question 2 and 3 are always, how do you want to divide it up, and when do you want to give it to them? Unequivocally. And it just struck me as, profound that here we're contemplating quasi-permanent decisions about our family for multiple generations, and in just a matter of minutes or hours, we're asked to make these decisions. And juxtaposing that on our discovery processes today, or processes, they can last in some cases months or even years. And I'm not saying that we don't begin to implement and do things, but we really tried to create a time and a space for our clients to connect with and to understand the things that they're trying to solve for. I'll continue on here, and the other items that I'll share with you in the coming couple of pages here are the idea of putting people first. Most of my career was driven by structure and by process. So if you're a financial advisor or other professional, very often we have process. There's always an emphasis, and it's important to have a process of how to what we do. And I think the structures, so whether we sell products or services, or in the legal field, we ultimately use structures to provide solutions and support the outcomes that our clients desire. But one of the real big insights I had is the idea of putting people first. And so on our homepage, on our website, we have a nice graphic that communicates the emphasis that we place on people, process, or practices, and structure, emphasizing people. And it's something that I, double entendre here, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to put people first and keep them out in front. So again, digressing into traditional estate planning, and I'm sure David York, Gonzalo, you alluded to his presentation, talks about. In the discovery meetings, we ask questions about things that they care about, but very, very quickly, tax and wealth transfer, those themes, if you will, take over, and the structure starts to drive the process. And what we realized working with families is, rather than doing things with people, very often things are done to them, especially to the second and third generation. And so if you ponder why 97% of wealth dissipates after 3 generations, very often it's because things are done extrinsically. They're not wrong, it's just that intrinsically folks are not connected, the family is not connected to the desired outcomes. And so we've discovered that by putting people first, by getting them intrinsically connected to the why and to the family's true wealth, it gives more meaning, more depth, and more duration to the purposes behind the structures and the practices. One last thought here, and sometimes I refer to it as the slippery slope or the magic ingredient. Ron, in the segue to our presentation, was sharing a little bit about a practice practices that he's developed, particularly of late. And for us as a family, especially trying to teach our children some of these ideas of true wealth and empowered wealth, I learned a lot because I early on noticed that they not only were not embracing the ideas, in many cases, there was a little bit of cynical responses, or really, is that talking about true wealth again, or this gratitude stuff? I realized just in my own journey that it took us 2-3 years to get the kids and the family serious about it. They saw that first and foremost, I was committed to these conversations. And gradually they saw the benefits. And I think it's like planting seeds and watering and understanding that it's time. And so Lee Brower often likes to say that we don't leave a legacy, we live a legacy. And I never quite understood what he meant by that until more recently, when I look back at my own journey and I understood that the legacy I was leaving, the wealth, the true wealth transfer I was making was one that I was living. And so that's why the emphasis really is on people first, and then practices that the families have been and can be doing or instituting, traditions and rituals and things like that, because we believe that it's really through those that we set the conditions to sustain the wealth over generations. So again, I'll just pause for a second, see if there are any thoughts or questions.
Avi, I love the way you kind of, I think you called it, what was that second bullet where you kind of take, it's a little bit of taking a deep breath and really kind of deep thinking and evaluation, right? And thank you, the gift of time. From where I sit and interacting with so many people on the phone, it is, or on the call today, it's, I just got a phone call from a client. I just got a phone call from an attorney or a CPA. My client needs a trust. My client needs a second to die. I need $10 million. It's like boom, 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 boom. And nobody kind of stops to have that conversation about what are you really trying to accomplish. And I think that warrants maybe a little bit more conversation on if you care to share kind of, you probably have people come to your office or maybe referred to you, and that's like they go right to the structure. So how do you turn them away from that and tell them to take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's talk about this?
If I had to summarize it with one word, I would use curiosity. We're often told to be interested, not interesting. So that's the way I remembered it as a practice. So again, it wasn't a sales technique that I was going to bring to work and start now doing with my clients. It was a way for myself to be even better. I always saw myself as a trusted advisor. And when I thought about being a good leader for families and stewarding them, I knew that it would be important to be curious as to why they want the things that they want for, why these things are important to them. And that, along with a true wealth mindset. So for those of you that aren't familiar with true wealth, we've used that term a few times. I'd highly encourage you to connect with Ron and to learn a little more. And it's a perspective. It's not, the only way to think about wealth. But what resonated there for me was that it balanced financial wealth with the other things that we care about. It created a framework for us, for my wife and I, to be intentional about the things that we cared about. So it's got the core things that you would expect, from family to health and faith. It has experience and education and reputation and travel and all the other things that matter. And it has giving back in whatever way, shape, or form, our time and our energy and even our resources to the things we care about. But it was a framework that provided us with a way to think about how to live a balanced life. And also often we see people that have a lot of success in one of those areas, but predominantly financial, at the expense of maybe their health or their relationship with their children or something else. And so I think that if you could read the bubbles coming off of your clients' minds, they really, what they're asking for and what they want, the reason they're buying these products and coming to us and asking us for advice is I believe that they want balance. They want to live happy, joyful, fulfilling, impactful lives at the end of the day. And money is a resource, but they don't know quite how to do it. And so we assume that if we have more money, somehow magically that'll translate to more of this other stuff. And it's not that it doesn't, but money is like fuel in a gas tank. You know, if you got a good game plan and good conversation and a good map and you know, it can be a wonderful road trip, but gas in a tank, unlimited gas in a tank in and of itself, you can drive the car off the cliff. I mean, you take the metaphor anywhere you want to take it. In and of itself, isn't it? So I think for many, many years, you know, in our industry, we thought that the stuff, the products and the services and things were the driver. And if we maximized or optimized the stuff, somehow that would take care of the people. And really through the work and through my own personal journey, I realized that if we put the people first, if we are curious about what our clients are really striving for, if we give them the gift of time and space, not only for us to understand, but for them to connect. Sometimes they don't even know what they want until we give them that gift of time and space to really understand. And why is this important? And what would be true if you had got that? And what needs to happen? We won't always be able to help them with each of the things, but at least we can help connect them with what needs to happen. And then that informs the decisions we make as professionals. So if I can, Gonzalo, can I give you a quick example? You know, it's a
Please
simple
do,
one, but it's an
absolutely.
important one. So a couple of years ago, a client owns a shore property in the, you know, Brigantine or Ventnor Margate area. It came to us about potentially selling the property. The market prices had risen precipitously, and they were receiving an offer that exceeded anything they imagined they might get one day. They asked us to, as advisors, crunch the numbers and do the analysis, which, as you'd imagine, most of the arrows pointed at incurring or selling the property. We even had a way to do a 1031 and minimize the tax. So we were really proud of the analysis, and we're ready to present it. And you know, this is early on with my journey around empowered wealth and true wealth. So I have the client back in a meeting, and have the presentation ready and the data to present to them. And I asked the permission to just ask a few questions before presenting my recommendations. And the questions, as you imagine, were more qualitative questions. Just tell me a little bit more about the property. You know, how have you guys spent time there? And so, well, what do you imagine I heard? You know, we use it a lot, and we go down, and the family and the kids and the grandkids, and ask them if they ever, you know, provide or lend the house to family and friends. And in fact, there are a few extended family members who couldn't afford a vacation property in the summers, and they were very proud of the fact that they each summer gave them a week there. And so they talked for about 5-10 minutes about the property and the different ways they've used it and the experiences and the memories that and such. So it was interesting. They said, you know, would you excuse us for a sec? And they're kind of whispering to each other, talking quietly. And after maybe 30 seconds, you know, a minute, they looked up at me and they said, Avi, forgive us for all the trouble we put you through. We decided not to sell the property. Now, had they sold it, all those assets would have come into our firm to be managed. So, you know, I'm proud that we always want to do the right thing for clients, but had I not had that mindset, had I not had this sort of notion of true wealth in my own life and practiced it, I don't know that I would have been that much more curious. I think I would have just focused on the analysis that they had asked us to do. And maybe they still would have come to the same conclusion. I don't want to take away from them. But I believe that by helping them reflect on truly what mattered, it helped juxtapose the financial choice with all the other areas of their life that mattered, so they could make a balanced decision. And so I often describe it, you know, when we tidy things up financially for clients, it's like I come to their door with a box and a beautiful ribbon. I go, here you go. Here's your financial plan. Here's your asset allocation. And they're looking at me and wondering if I'm going to step in. Am I coming in? And what I mean by that is there's more. I always had a sense there was more to it, but I didn't quite have the tools and the methodologies for helping them go deeper and figure out what this was all going to translate to.
Yeah, thank you for that story, Avi. And just by way of reference, I believe you were talking about the 4 quadrants and the Brouwer quadrant, and there is a book out there for anybody who's curious by Lee Brouwer on the Brouwer quadrant, where it talks about core and experience and giving back, and then financial. So you've got those 4 quadrants, which is what Avi was referring to. So if you're curious, buy the book and check it out. Avi, you've got a couple more things I know you wanted to cover. I don't know, Kathy, if we have any questions from the group, but if not, we can continue on.
Yeah, so let me just, let me break in here, Avi, and comment that when we started this presentation workshop, both you and Ron mentioned that you were both at a crossroad. And it was that crossroad in your lives that caused you both to kind of stop, take a look around, take a deep breath, and state that something needs to change. And you both, through different, paths, came upon these empowered wealth concepts and integrated them into your lives. So, number one, do you believe that your success with this practice is because these are concepts that you live by, number one? And number two, how has this changed your practice and how has your recruiting changed in terms of how you get clients now versus what your practice looked like previously and how you got clients then, if it has changed at all? And what do you attribute that to?
Those are both great questions. I think I'd like to answer them with just a couple of ideas that I live by. And one of them is that the learning is in the struggle. And when you take away the struggle, you take away the learning. And I think that's a universal truth. It applies to business, applies to life, applies to our children. There's a great book, The Blessing of a Skin Knee, that I read early on after having kids. So I offer that because most of my learning happened at home. Most of my learning happened because I was looking to apply these ideas in my own home. And it began to shift the way I thought about life and thought about things. And I organically started to show up at work differently. Organically, that began to shift the culture at work. So it was never a set of tools, or it was not going to be a selling technique. It wasn't something that I brought to work and said, hey guys, I figured out how to 10x our business by selling true wealth. It really was truly a mindset that has and continues to evolve. And it just a profound. I watched, my wife again, I share these stories not to brag, just for the anecdotal stories that they offer. We just got back from Moab, and it was a few days with some of the families that I get to work with in the family office. And we believe heavily in what we call experiential learning. So the mind understands, but the body learns. And if we can put people in learning environments where we take them out of their comfort zone and put in a learning zone, it accelerates the learning, it accelerates the awareness. And for families that are truly committed to making transformations and observing their beliefs that they show up with and wanting to break through those barriers by creating these learning environments, we really turbocharge them and accelerate the learning. So my wife's there, and we're rock climbing, Kathy, on day 2. And there's this crack in the rock, and it's a more advanced climb. And of course, usually the one who volunteers to jump ahead and take one for the team. Unfortunately, I did it right after lunch, and about 2/3 of the way up, I decide, it's probably best if I come down. So, having observed what I did, she jumped in, and I can kind of hear her saying and sharing with the group, we'll see if I can make it. I'm not sure. Well, she had an unbelievable insight that she just needed to pay attention to the next move and just take it one move at a time. And 34 of those one move at a times later, critical moves later, she was at the top. The only one that day to even get there. And aside from being proud of her, she walked away from that realizing what she was saying to herself, and what the power of just thinking about one move at a time is in life. So for all of you on the call, if you have a challenge today, and it just seems like there's this huge gap between where you are and where you want to be, being able to just think about what that next critical move is and turn that into a practice every day. What's the 1% move we can make? A year later, that's a 37x improvement if you can just improve 1% a day. So I know it's a long answer to a great question, but the learning that we've had as a family has quickly translated to the way we've shown up in life and at work, in the way we engage our clients, and having the confidence to encourage them to think about these things. And in some ways, I've kind of left the confines of my professionalism. We're kind of walking the fence, if you will. We're not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists. We don't endeavor to address significant challenges, but we encourage and we offer frameworks and tools for families to reflect and to grow and to balance and to achieve the things that are truly meaningful to them. So that would be, the way I would address the first question. Remind me your second question, please.
Well, the second question dealt with your recruiting techniques, and what you've described originally, or at least I think what we've heard, is that before you integrated the empowered wealth concepts into your life, and consequently your business, you had a very a more traditional sort of transactional practice, and it doesn't appear that that's what you have, that's the basis of your practice anymore. So has your recruiting changed? Because you and I have discussed previously that your revenue is, you 10 times your business as a result of these techniques, as a result of your changing lifestyle. So how has your recruiting changed?
I think, I would use the word attract, first of all. And I think that my mom comes to mind, by the way, Kathy, so indulge me. She says, nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. Right. And I don't think in life there's a way to fake that. So I think most of us, all of us on the call today, do what we do because we genuinely care about people. This gave me a bigger toolkit, a bigger philosophical mindset to care about people, to show up, to be a better listener. And again, I give a lot of credit, Ron sitting here, and there's so much to offer by way in the training and just being in and with and around him. And I always find myself challenging myself to be a better person. And by better means that I'm talking less and listening more and asking better questions and, just being a better leader. So I think we are attracting a different type of person. I think we're attracting high quality families. So part of the 10X that you allude to is that our biggest checks went 10X and 20X, as opposed to doing traditional planning for several thousands of dollars. We're getting very significant retainers to do consulting work and planning with families at a level that I never imagined we would be doing, which is exciting. It's exciting to be invited into those conversations and to truly be that trusted advisor that can sit next to and with the families and in a collaborative way co-design their family enterprises. Let me continue to answer this by going to the next slide I had here. We've developed what we call a universal framework for creating a family enterprise. Our aspiration is to help co-create a family enterprise for the family. And the family enterprise is an amalgamation of both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of a family. So it's all the traditional things you would imagine, all the structures, trust structures, corporate structures, etc., this stuff, along with the qualitative stuff that matter, the traditions and the practices and things, and to create a fusion between the two through practices that begin that wealth transfer, that living that legacy that Gonzalo alluded to at the beginning of the call. And while this seems simplistic, there's a lot of depth to each of these stages, but we've created in a way because we wanted to encourage collaboration. And if you think about a SEAL team, maybe it's a good metaphor, a professional sports team, a championship team, as you guys would imagine, they can almost anticipate other team members' thoughts. So if you're on a mission as a SEAL, or you're on a professional sports team and you've practiced as a team, you've collaborated, it's high performance collaboration. And we wanted to create an environment where professionals that serve and steward a family could similarly come together and work effectively, collaboratively, not just cooperatively, but collaboratively to support a family. And so we've developed a framework that allows us to recognize at each stage what we would each be doing. So the reason I'm mentioning this, to your question, Kathy, is part of the way we're attracting, or what you're saying, recruiting, is I used to do workshops and seminars and a lot of stuff to try to attract clients. Today, through our collaborations, by working with other professionals, family coaches, family advisors, they are introducing us because they understand and care about these families and want to see them supported in a way that helps them achieve the things that they want to accomplish. And so we're seeing more and more of our introductions come by way of collaborators than anywhere else.
Kathy, there's a question that I would like to ask of Avi, because I think it's an appropriate time to ask this question. One of the people on the call, Isaac Cohen, I have found myself in this situation and helped clients in this way. I have found it much harder for myself. How do you manage it for yourself?
Again, my mom comes to mind. She did me a big favor years ago, Isaac. She said to me, life is not easy. And the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. So I offer that tongue in cheek. I definitely, this is not the easy road, but it is so fulfilling. We manage this. I want to give you a practical answer, but the reality is that it's a significant undertaking. Some people, one person I was having a conversation with, joked around and said, "It sounds like a lot of brain damage. Why don't you just focus on what you do and sell and whatever? Why do you bother with all this?" And I think for me, it goes back to genuinely caring. And my bigger why behind this, as I think about our world today, and I think about the importance of families and things. And I offer that really as somebody who's very accepting of a plurality of ways to live one's life. I do believe as a foundation, the universal foundation, families are really important. And so in a world where there are more and more distractions and more challenges, and it's harder and harder to raise our kids. Like when you think about for the folks that, are today in their 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, who grew up, at night when you were home. There was nobody at your door talking to you and coming at you, if you will. Today, my kids are plugged in 24/7 virtually. And not that I feel like I'm against the world, but I've got, it's both a unique opportunity because my son, my 13-year-old son who loves information, can learn nonstop. I mean, he can decide he's interested in something and taught himself how to AutoCAD over the weekend for his robotics, which is incredible. We didn't have to send him off to school and stuff to do that. But on the other hand, really strengthening families is what drives us as an organization and me in particular. So it's a worthy investment of time and effort. But my practical answer is by seeking clarity in what our families are aspiring to do. We use what we call broadly a discussion document. So as we engage families on these journeys, through the discovery process, we identify key markers, key milestones that they would like to address. We help, with their help, we prioritize the things that we're going to work on. And we, through a discipline, do our utmost to stay focused on those things. And I found that over time, if we do that, that we're making meaningful progress in supporting our families without getting too scattered, because there is always the risk of attempting to address too many things at one time. And so we found over the years that that helped us. So I hope that's a thoughtful answer. I'm happy to address that offline further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avi.
Kathy, do you have anything else?
I don't have any other questions. Please continue.
Okay. Avi, I think we're just to do a quick, I think this is the last of your slides, and I just want to do a time check here at about 7 minutes to the hour. So I do want to put some wrapping comments towards the end. So why don't you go ahead and tighten this up and let us know your final thoughts.
Yeah. So I'll just fill in a couple of quick blanks, on my own personal journey. I mentioned in the beginning that in 2013, we were faced with some challenges. Ron talked about an author, David Brooks, and he has a great book called The Second Mountain that really has become a great model for us in life's journeys. And many of us have, a first mountain of success, and then we generally have a challenge. And, I think that's universal for many people. Mine was in 2013, in light of all that success, trying to gain focus. Fast forward, we made a transition, and I found an opportunity to either carry forward a legacy business or to start something from scratch, given all I had learned and all that I was aspiring to do. And really, my good fortune is in working with Ron and Lee and my other colleagues, we were able to build what I think is a unique family office that, by the way, we don't do any asset management because I believe that gets in the way. That truly focuses on a family's true wealth and their desire to create a family enterprise. And that's been a real blessing to us. But just stepping back in my closing remarks, I think the empowered wealth mindset and the true wealth framework offers us a number of opportunities, which I summarized here. I think first and foremost, my big insight looking back is I was able to create congruency in all areas of my life. And rather than having a work persona and a home persona and a personal one, I truly get to walk my talk, if you will, or live a life where there's a lot of congruency in what I do and how I do that. And that's a real blessing when we can do that. So many of us struggle with that. And so I think personally, this has meant so much to me. When I think about my family, leading up to the recent pandemic, but even going through it, all the tools and all the practices we've developed have really helped strengthen our family individually and collectively. It's not perfect. It's sloppy. It's kids, nothing like that ever is easy, but it's given them a number of cornerstones and iron rods to hang on to, especially going through the things that we're going through. So I think that really there's a tremendous opportunity to strengthen our families that way. When I think about our client relationships, they're deeper, they're stronger. And, usually people fire you for what they hire you. There's a cliche, you get fired for what you get hired for. So if you sell performance, you get fired on performance. But, we truly, and I feel very grateful, have clients for life. Because of the conversations we're having with them, the way they open up and the trust they've put in us is really tremendous. And so grateful and honored to be in those positions with these families. And finally, building communities and aligning myself and our collective opportunity to align ourselves with communities that honor our true wealth is tremendous. And I think now more than ever, that is so important. And so, as I said in the beginning, I feel very fortunate that I've had some great communities of people to surround myself with. There's a very famous saying I'm translating to English that from all my students I've learned, and it's from one of our sages. And you never know where ideas come from and who you can learn from. And being surrounded by like-minded individuals has been a tremendous blessing. So I'll pause there, and again, grateful for the opportunity to share my story and welcome any questions now as I follow up.
Well, Avi, put the last slide up because I think it's got your contact information. I'd like to, I just kind of hung on one thing that you said just a second ago. It's you don't do assets under management. I also know that you don't do insurance and that you don't do a lot of things. You're really working with clients on this journey that you go through with them. And I think it's important to say here that you've talked to me about collaboration with other wealth management people, insurance people, attorneys, accountants, and so on, all the people that are typically around the table. And nobody's really approaching, well, I'm sure there's a few, but not that I know of, that are kind of approaching this, I think, as you are. So I would encourage anybody that's on the call that, if you ever want to reach out to Avi and talk to him, he is just a great person to talk to and think through things. I'm sure he could help some of your clients as well. He clearly doesn't pose a threat or competitor to any of you. But more importantly, and I've been on this journey now with Ron for a few years as well, and have gotten to meet and spend time with Avi and others like Avi in this community, is Agency One continues. And there's a few people on the call. I just looked at the attendee list a bit ago that have been kind of through some of this training with us. So it is my goal, it is Kathy's goal to continue to expand that Agency One empowered wealth community. We would welcome anybody who has any interest in, after having heard Ron and Avi share this hour with us, to reach out to us and let us know, because we'd love to continue to help people venture on this journey that goes beyond the commoditization and the product and the structure and everything that we do every day. And, I'll leave you with this. I don't know that there's a whole lot of financial advisors that walk in with reams of paper and proposals and structures and grats and clats and all these other things that when you sit down with a client, and if somebody like Avi walks in the door after you, you're going to lose the case. So I think somewhere in there is a message, because the amount of the deep relationships that Avi has been able to create with his clients and with the people that he works with are really go beyond the spreadsheet, if you will. And I think as financial advisors and guides to our clients, I think we need to venture down that path a little bit harder than what we normally do. We have one comment here from Deb Shotsky. Avi, wow, thank you so much. It is so rich to hear how you are operating professionally and personally. So Avi, thank you. And Deb, thank you for that comment.
Gonzalo,
Yes.
if I might just before you close, two things. So, Avi, it is extremely clear, at least to me, and if it's clear to me, it's got to be clear to everybody else that's listening, that one of the reasons that you are so successful with these concepts is because you got your own house, you put your own house in order, and you put your own house in order first. And I think it's incumbent upon everybody to take a look at their own house before they try and quote unquote fix somebody else's, because when you come from a place of authenticity, everything else becomes that much easier. And that's exactly what you did. Agency One, with the help of Ron, as Gonzalo had mentioned, has hosted a number of empowered wealth workshops. And Gonzalo, maybe before we close, you could talk about briefly some of the workshops that we've hosted, and that if folks are interested, we would be certainly willing to put together another group so that folks could learn a little bit more about these empowered wealth concepts. You're on mute, Gonzalo.
Thank you for teeing that up, Kathy. Absolutely. Look, we've done two groups, and the way Ron runs it is typically a 1 or 2 day training session. We hosted one in our offices at Agency One. We also hosted one in Asheville, North Carolina, where we did fly fishing. So it was experiential learning as part of that process, and that was a day and a half. We did fishing one day and some training. And then Ron does 8 weeks of follow-up, 1 hour a week with the group. So there's, continuation of that learning process. And then, frankly, the Agency One participants and group have now coalesced. They've come together. We have once a month calls. I participate in a number of other calls with Ron and Avi and a few others from that community. So it becomes a little bit of a study group. So I would throw, again, to the people that are interested, just reach out to Kathy or myself, and we would love to put a third group together, a fourth group together. So just reach out to us and let us know. We'd be happy to do that. Kathy, back to you.
We don't have anything else. I am happy to wrap up if you want to turn this back over to me.
I just want to thank Ron and Avi for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. Very enlightening, certainly for me. Every time I hear you guys both speak, I learn something. So, and I also want to thank everybody on the call for sharing with us. So, Kathy, back to you. You can wrap us up.
Okay, Ron, Avi, and Gonzalo, thank you very much. Now, a few reminders for the folks that remain on this call. Please remember to fill out your surveys. They will be emailed to you sometime this afternoon. Also, the conference continues tomorrow with 2 more informative sessions. At 12 noon, we have a legislative update from Mark Caden, who is the chairman and CEO of Finseca, which is a merger between AALU and Gamma. If you want to know what is happening from a legislative perspective in the financial services industry, this is a must-attend session. And finally, at 3 o'clock tomorrow, we have a workshop specifically designed for advisors that work with clients who are landowners and farmers on how to protect their business through a very special platform offered by Nationwide called Land as Your Legacy. Our featured speaker is Lacey Preston from Nationwide, and we hope that you will join us tomorrow afternoon for this as well. Thank you for your participation. We hope that we provided some value to you this afternoon, and please reach out to Agency One if we can be of any assistance. Once again, thank you, Avi, Ron, and Gonzalo, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.